By the time that we get to Florida, it's going to be on and popping. They are outlawing black people, and we are going to talk about it tonight on the 8 Black Hands. Let's go. We will not be outlawed. We will not be denied. Our history, our ancestors, our knowledge will be supreme forever and ever on. Amen. This is another episode of the 8 Black Hands. It's episode 195. We are here with the crew. Let's jump right in, fellas. You have seen me be a little bit bombastic about this issue in Florida with the Governor DeSantis down there in Florida is outlawing or rejecting the AP African American Studies course so that young people in Florida cannot take it. He does this at the same time that AP European History and a whole bunch of other AP courses that are ethnically specific or history specific to other individuals are still allowed. So the one that is not allowed is ours, the African American Studies AP course. It is an elective course, meaning not everybody has to take it. It doesn't mean that your white kids are being forced into a classroom where they're going to have to learn the truth about the country that they want to learn lies about. That is not what is happening there. He is outlawing it for everybody, including our students, meaning if you are a black family in Florida, you don't have access to something that people of European descent have for their kids, which is access to an advanced, scholarly, proper course that tells you about yourself and your place in the country. My question for you fellas as we kick it off and we start the night off here is, am I being hyperbolic when I say that this is a red alert for the reemergence of legal Jim Crow in this country? We are like the frogs in the boiling water. We're simmering and we are being kind of sleepy about it because we can't tell that we're in boiling water yet. But these type of things, to me, are red alarm fires. They're not like, oh, well, I see where they're coming from. Tell me what y'all think in terms of what's your threat level? When you think about threat levels, how much of a threat level do you guys see what's going on in Florida?
Yeah, I mean, I think Florida has been code red and ground zero for a whole lot of just white supremacist flag waving for quite some time. Whether it's anti-CRT, whether it's book banning, this is just a continuation of their march towards hell. That they've been really prideful. They're like Proud Boys personified in regards to curricula and other things. So this is not new. Their continuation, and I would say the threat level is pretty high. Like if we're not vigilant about this kind of stuff, it's to our own peril.
Somehow I kind of figured you were going to say that. Somehow I kind of figured that you weren't going to say, well, this is cool with me.
Yeah, it's all right. Let them just, teach their own, that kind of thing. Nah.
I feel like, jump in here. I feel like a crazy man because the reasoning was that it doesn't have academic value or educational value. That is the reason that the state of Florida gave. But this was put together by black scholars. Now it includes some things that white mainstream conservatives find offensive, like queer theory, black feminism. It has Angela Davis, information there. I mean, coursework or stuff around intersectionality and things that Angela Davis and others have talked about. How are you responding to this in terms of your alarm level and what you think we should do about it?
Well, for me, definitely, I think it's pretty consistent. This is always kind of, the whitelash that happens whenever folks start to really ask those real serious questions or put those real serious ideas out there. I really actually find it really interesting that the New York Times article then articulated all the concerns that they have, which really were around the last unit, and really talking about theory and ideas more, right? And the whole point of the AP course is to not indoctrinate the students, but to introduce them to all these different perspectives in order for them to draw their own conclusions. I even read that the Black Panthers were originally, cited by the governor as one of the reasons, and then it was taken away and then replaced with Angela Davis as a communist. Angela Davis wasn't in the Black Panthers. But like this is a consistent theme whenever we start to question, wait a minute, we're actually being indoctrinated, and we have been indoctrinated, and a lot of us are still going through that unlearning process. So when we want these type of things to be exposed to our children that we learned that we didn't learn about until like 30 years old, 40 years old, you know what I mean? It becomes a serious threat to the status quo. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. Now the threat level, I really think it's just like, yo, we live in America. The threat level always been on red. And I think the issue is that sometimes people forget that that's the reality, right? So you always got to remain vigilant. You always got to remain very in the know about what's happening. But straight up, like Florida has a state mandate which mandates public schools to teach African-American history. And that's been on the books. So I just find it really interesting that the language that he's using is no educational value, right? As they're doubling down on European AP history and all these other AP histories of other certain ethnic groups and perspectives. And I think it just reflects kind of this society's disregard to Black value, Black life, and Black ideas.
So you said they actually have that already, like Black history is a course for the state.
Yep.
Well, in their state standards. Yeah, in their state standards.
So, but this is a college level elective. So they're like, you already got all y'all going to get. You know what I mean? That we've already watered that down. You're not going to get this college level course on top of that.
Ray, what do you think about, like, you grew up in the South, now you're a Northerner. Does this make you look down South and think, I mean, you know, let's just be real.
He's packing his bags now. He's moving back down there.
I just want to say Raymond is our resident Republican on the show, and I just need to know, I mean, this is where the GOP is going. They are heading towards, this is going to be their national candidate. Their national platform is going to be an anti-Black, beat up on Black, blame Black people first agenda. And they are doing it as entertainment for white folks and white voters who like to see a guy get out there and stick it to the Blacks. And now they got a whole party that the agenda is stick it to the Blacks. Oh, you know, take away their history, take their books away, you know, erase their heroes, get all that woke stuff out of there, civil rights and all that. We don't even need no damn civil rights. Now, I've heard you talk before, sir, about being a plessiest. And for people listening, you know, that's a fancy way of saying, like, you know, pre-Brown. So help me out, brother. Number one, what's up with your party?
So, man, listen, I can't speak for the party, man. I can only speak for myself. so we'll start there with that. You know, I vote the way I vote because of fiscal conservatism. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. You know, I don't believe in just giving a blank check to people like Sharif to go out and just spend money all crazy.
Yeah, y'all spend it on the military. You fine with that?
They listen.
That ain't conservative fiscally.
It brings values. They put people like you on notice from the countries that you done lived in. Anyways, it's different, man. It's difficult because it's a war. With regards to what's happening down in Florida. And Florida is a case study for what can happen in all these other states with regards to just how, you know, how we look at Black folks. And so you saw Rufo. Rufo made his way down to Florida, got a cabinet position or whatever position he got. Rufo, the guy that was behind the anti-CRT thing. So when you see him in pictures with DeSantis, you know some bullshit is about to happen with regards to Black people and people that fall under the marginalized umbrella. What I'll say about this DeSantis thing is that dude is dangerous, man, because, like, you know, he's dangerous because he's smarter than Trump. And so when you have the ability to kind of play down to these dumbass people that don't really understand like what you're doing to them or whatever, even if they are racialized white and they don't understand like what you're doing to them, he has the ability to do that, and he also has the ability to reach middle-class white people, rich white people, and then he also has a reach, and y'all not gonna like this, but Black women that are pro-choice in terms of their schools or whatever, right? He was able to win his first election based off of Black women.
That's not true.
Bro, I done gave you the data. I done gave you the data.
That's not true.
I gave you the data, bro.
That is not true. That is not true. See, school reformers like to repeat things sometimes.
That's blasphemous.
I mean, they like to say things and repeat things like that. The idea that a whole bunch of black women in Florida became single issue voters and voted, on school choice for the Klan. Yeah, for Ron.
For the Klan,
yeah. Basically,
so
it sounds good. It sounds good to the Florida choice people.
That didn't happen? Are you saying that didn't happen?
I am saying yes. I'm very clear.
I think that is exactly what he said.
Yeah, and
this is interesting because you took offense when people were blaming black men for Georgia, but now you're going to blame Florida to black women for Florida. That sounds a little hypocritical, bro.
So, sir, if I didn't have the statistical data to back up what I'm saying, I would never say it. 635,000 black women voted in Florida in the 2018 election between Gillum and DeSantis. The margin of that vote, he won by 40,000 votes. If you look at the exit poll data, and I know y'all gonna say, exit poll data, you can't count on that. Anyways, if you look at the exit poll data, it says 18%, 117,000 black women voted for DeSantis. Reason being is because they have a heavy school choice movement in Florida. And so you have to weigh the option. Are you going to vote for a candidate who is black and is not for school choice? Or are you going to be able to use your scholarships that they're giving to you to go to whatever school you want to go to and vote for DeSantis? And they did.
Okay. here's what I will say in response to that. Florida is a weird state in the first place, period. Okay. Right? So when you calculate who is black and who is Hispanic and how they vote and when they vote red, Florida is a totally different state, kind of like Texas, but just slightly more cognitively impaired than Texas. But when you talk about black people and you talk about Hispanic people in Florida, you often are talking about Cubans, right? So I want to start there. You are often talking about Cuban people. You're not talking about straight black people who nationally, as everywhere in the country, black women and black men vote almost 95 to 99% for Democrats.
Sir, that is not what I'm talking about. 44% of Latino people voted for DeSantis in 2018. Bro, the data is there.
I want to keep saying DeSantis too, by the way, because we mixing him up with this new Santos dude, and people think we're talking about the wrong guy. We are talking about the sandwich, not this new guy, not the Brazilian dress wearing dude. We're talking about the governor of Florida, right? Just so people know, we just want to keep our things straight here. 18% of black women did vote for. First of all, we don't know straight black or black Hispanic people voted for DeSantis, but DeSantis is a rare market for Republicans winning over people of color, period. And a lot of that is Cubans, especially in Miami.
Let's take a pause. Let's take a pause. Let's take a pause here because this is historic.
Okay.
This is historic right here.
Let's do it.
You just said that 18% of black, and then you threw in a mixture of Cuban, voted for DeSantis. You just confirmed what I said that you initially disagreed with.
No. I'm not disagreeing with the fact that you had black women who voted for. I'm actually reaffirming that there are black women and Latino women in Florida and in Texas that vote for Republicans. You have Mexican immigrants in Texas voting to get the white bribe to become probationary white people in this country because there's no other way to do it than to be racist.
Facts.
So in both Florida and Texas, you have that going on with a population of people of color. I'm not discounting that at all.
Okay.
I am saying that I don't believe that the reason was that you had a bunch of Democrat black women who saw school choice as the single issue thing that would motivate them to vote, so they wouldn't voted for DeSantis on that. I disagree with that part. And if somebody wants to prove me wrong. I'm okay with being wrong. I don't believe a whole bunch of black women said, I don't care about voting rights. I don't care about Trayvon Martin. I don't care about stand your ground. I don't care about like gunshots getting fired into black people's houses by police officers in Florida, all across the state. I don't care about racism. I don't care about any of that. All I care about is school choice. You know who put that? You know who put that out? The James Madison Policy Institute. You know what that is? That's a right-wing think tank sitting around, kind of like having circle jerks with wishful thinking. Stop it.
Journal put it out too. Wall Street Journal put it
What
out.
is the Wall Street Journal except for an amplifier of right-wing think tank nonsense?
Bro,
maybe a national paper that's got more of that going on.
So, but Chris, you also got to understand that the same thing happened in Virginia as well, right? With the governor's race in Virginia, it came down to school choice for a lot of folks. It did, bro. It did.
There are people saying it came down to school choice. There's people saying it came down to CRT. There's people saying that it came down to woke politics and litter boxes in classrooms. There's people saying that it came down to libs of TikTok and blue-haired teachers. Anybody can make the Rorschach. It came down to whatever they want. But if anybody tries to get me to believe that a whole bunch of black people woke up one day and lost their damn minds and went and voted for the right, people who weren't Diamond and Silk, people who weren't Christian Walker already, like in hiding, people who didn't already hate their people, the Uncle Ruckuses of the world. Yeah, I just got problems with these good white people. No, come on, bro.
There's a lot of black people that vote for Republicans, man. It is.
How many?
He said, how many? Use one hand to count.
Name both of them. You and Tim Scott. Who else?
Hey, Tim Scott.
Herman Cain, and Herman Cain dead. Herman Cain died.
Tim Scott wins his elections pretty heavy.
Not from black people.
He gets some black votes.
The last time Tim Scott was in a room of more than 10 black people was at a basketball game.
Yikes.
Anyways, we off topic. Ish, jump in here. I saw you jumping in.
Yeah, man, I'm just itching because last governor election in Florida, he only got 13% of the black vote overall, right? And this idea that black women are the determining factor, that feeds into like a false narrative that the society like puts all this pressure on black women. Black women are the reason why Doug Jones in Mississippi, or Alabama, I forget where he was from, that became a senator. Alabama. So like when we talk about these things, black women are usually the deciding factor and the most active voters within the black community, and usually the most organized folks when it comes to bringing people out to the polls. So when we talk about 13% of overall black vote, you're forgetting 87% of black folks voted against them. So like all this, it doesn't matter really what race you are in this society now when it comes to being anti-black, right? We're all indoctrinated with anti-black views. That's the modus operandi about this society is based upon, right? So we need to be very honest about the fact that, we are slipping in regards to folks not knowing that and acknowledging again. But again, that goes back to my original point about forgetting kind of the things that we already knew.
Yeah, not sleight of hand, slightly honest.
Ish.
Fully honest.
To your point, Ish, right? If 13% of black people voted for him in Florida, right? In this election, the 2022 election, he won by more votes than he did in 2018, right? Where are the rest of these votes coming from?
You know where the rest of the votes coming from? Because I need to talk to my ignorant school choice black people. Oh my God, I just need me a voucher. Okay, let's talk for a second, because I'm going to tell you where your votes came from. Two of the most historic black districts within Florida were gerrymandered out of existence.
Okay.
Want to know where they came from? He spent the last couple of years of these dumbasses that voted for him, of color dumbasses. He spent the last 2 years making sure they have no political power in perpetuity. So congratulations. I need me a voucher, people of color. Enjoy your goddamn voucher. Now you don't have no voting rights. Bro, you're about to not have any food. You're about to have no judicial rights. And now your kids can't even learn adequate black history in an advanced class that gets them college credit, that will actually set them up for being a teacher, an educator, a judge, a lawyer, a civil rights attorney, civil rights activist, a community leader who focuses on inequities. You now have cut off a pathway. Congratulations. Thank you for your vote, dumbass.
Bro, but if you look at Gillum, right?
Yeah.
Gillum he lost by 40,000 votes. he and Stacey Abrams pretty much had the same playbook in terms of making sure that folks that were historically disenfranchised were able to get back in terms of voting, right? So they had this push in order to get folks that had felonies get their records either expunged or get them like a fair shake at being able to become voters, right? And so he did a really great job at doing this, which is why the margins were so close. But then if you look at 2022, DeSantis started doing this anti-black scare tactic in terms of like, you know, arresting people, right? So like he didn't even have a right to arrest them. He was trying to form posses to go out and arrest people to scare them from voting, to scare them from voting. And so if you got a candidate that's out doing stuff like this, bro, this is way worse than bad hombres and like all the shit that Trump was doing, man. This is way worse. Mm-hmm. This is like the 60s, this is like the 50s and the 60s that we are walking into right now.
Yeah, this is like being at the end of Reconstruction and having people say, we think y'all went too far. You got too much. You have too many rights now. You have too much position. You're starting to have too much influence on the country and the nation. Therefore, we're going to have to deconstruct Reconstruction. So now we're going through a deconstruction phase again. Let's take away your college professors. Let's take away your scholarship. Let's take away your books, right? What's the first thing any fascist government does? They remove your books, right? They burn your libraries. They tear down your leaders and your thought leaders. They either kill your thought leaders or your thought leaders get disappeared. That's the way this works, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody asked me, and tell me if I'm lying. Like, if we think of the playbook, everywhere else in the world where this has been like a playbook, what are the first signs? This feels like them. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. This just feels like them.
I mean, but with that, right, preceding and during, particularly in initial stages, what also comes with that are people have been lulled to sleep. Right. And it's just like, oh, well, it's not as important. Oh, there are other things. Like I saw folks posted like, you ain't got to worry about that. Like, oh, y'all so easily distracted by what he's banning. And I'm just like, easily distracted. First of all, like you're easily distracted if you think this is not, an issue. Right. Like, and as we've all said, like, this is a consistent thing. It's not something that's brand new where he was all of a sudden now he's doing a 180. He's been consistent, and this has been a consistent drumbeat. But all of those things happen in parallel with people being, just drunk and satisfied. You know what I mean? And okay with like, oh yeah, well, things have either things have progressed or things aren't as bad as you think, or y'all being too noisy and blah blah blah. All of that is also around the world and throughout history. There's been some of that as well. The next thing you know, you wake up in chains.
So, but I got a question for y'all.
Intellectual chains.
I have a question for y'all. We went in crazy, right? I started a Twitter thread. You guys were engaged. We were talking about it. Bringing light to everything that's happening in Florida. But a main party that we didn't hear from this, we ain't hear shit from the College Board. They ain't dropped no statements. They ain't do nothing. They ain't put their hands behind their back. They're sitting on their hands right now. Ain't nobody typing on these keyboards from College Board. Why?
I mean, I love the idea that there's a lot of, like, we should make a list of the silent people.
Agreed.
College Board. NAACP, to their credit, did jump in on this. And the Florida NAACP is having a rally with notable folks on Wednesday. So I encourage people to look for that.
And I hope their law department is actually their legal.
I think they're
what they call their group,
the Legal Defense Fund.
Yeah.
I think that's part of this effort. It's called "Don't Say Black." If you look on Facebook, you'll find it. Don't say black, because he had the "Don't Say Gay." He said don't say anything except for the only thing you can say is David Duke. Right? You can't say nothing else. But Ray, that's a good point. Who else is silent? I mean, we got some famous Floridians who actually should be out here saying stuff who aren't saying anything right now. And I just want to say for the record, we're going to go ahead and say that there is one Florida resident that did come out and have something to say here. So let's see what Uncle Luke got to say.
Florida, this is Uncle Luke. Let me say this, and I want y'all to follow me real close. I want to thank Ron DeSantis. I know y'all going to think that's crazy, but I want to thank him right now for his attack on the teaching of Black history in our schools. That says to us, as Black African American parents, include myself, we need to be the ones teaching Black history to our kids. So I want to thank you, Ron, because now I'm more focused than ever. I'm going to be teaching my son about the Black Panthers, H. Rap Brown, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Minister Farrakhan. I'm going to be teaching him about all these different historical people that were so impactful to us as African Americans who fought the struggle. Harriet Tubman, the real story about Harriet Tubman. And when they were African American slaves that went back and told their slave owners, and Harriet Tubman killed them. You don't see that in the narrative that others would try and do the teaching. So I'm happy. I'm happy that it ain't just the teachings of one part of Martin Luther King. So I encourage every other African American parent in the state of Florida, don't get mad at this man. Be happy. Rejoice at this time, because now it is up to us to teach our kids African American history, and not that what they teach in schools, which is the watered down BS version of it all. So rejoice this morning, people of Florida. I holla.
All right,
Don't
y'all,
stop.
rejoice.
Don't stop. Get him. Get him.
Come on, y'all. The me so horny man say rejoice. We out there. Listen, I assume that this isn't a great message for this particular podcast and for my people here, for y'all. But let me do the dumbest thing possible, which is try to say, let's talk about the merits of what he's saying. He's saying now this has motivated him to teach his kids at home things that he should have been teaching all along, or things that the schools might never teach. So what's wrong with that point? What's wrong with the point of, listen, these schools are never going to teach you adequate history anyway, so you might as well take the responsibility and do it yourself.
Jump off with you, because I'm going to come after you, because I pretty much know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say? Then why don't you just go for me and just tell me what I'm going to say?
Nah, you might say something different.
All this black on black violence, all this black on black crime.
Listen, I mean, my thing is, listen, if it was just as simple as you said, Chris, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Like people saying, like, oh yes, I'm going to, push and challenge. One, I think the reason why I have a problem with it is, like, how many times do we have to have a Ron before we say, oh, we're going to make sure our youth understand? Like, I don't understand where this gap, was it because of Obama? Was it the Civil Rights act passing in the 60s? Like, what exact was it that Jimmy Carter won an election? Like, where is it that we're like, all right, now we can stop teaching? If he and now, oh, this happened, now I'm going to start teaching. And then I think the thank you, Ron, kind of, that was a little creepy for me, hearing that thank you, Ron, I want to thank you. So that just felt it was a little cringeworthy for me. You know what I mean? I just think he has he probably needs a publicist or something, just somebody to help him craft his language a little bit better. But I my biggest, and I do agree that he's probably right in a lot of ways, where somebody gets smacked in the face. Now all of a sudden, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start teaching my kids. Like, how many times do you got to get smacked in the face? It's almost like you see the competition now. They have these two people standing in front of each other, and each one sees how hard they can slap the other one. Except there's only one person doing the smacking, and then after that smack, every couple of, like, oh, now that same message people were saying after Trump got elected. Hey, now we're going to start teaching our kids about what's happening. Hey, now we're going to start to like stop starting to teach and just teach your kids. I mean, I think this out of school time is absolutely critical. And so I agree with that. Like, 100%. We've said this on the show 1,000 times. Like, we got to own the out of school time, like nobody's business, the way that we used to. That should be, Freedom School should be 24/7, 365, and 366 on a leap year, 365 and a half, whatever that is.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of it. We're going to come to that soon because tonight we want the focus to be on how do we combat academic whitelash, and it's a sense that that's what we're facing right now. So so let's come to that. But before we get there, Ray said that he knew what Sharif was going to say. Is that what Sharif was going to say? Is that what you
was I consistent with what you
consistent?
Yeah, what you were going to say?
For the most part. Listen, I felt like what Uncle Luke said was punch downsy, right? Like I feel like whenever you can come in with the resources that you have, his wife is a lawyer, right? And so like they have access to be able to go out and plus, given his history and the things that he's gone through, right? He's had to fight against the freedom of speech, and he's had to do all these things with Two Live Crew, going against the Supreme Court, going to the Supreme Court, and so Luke is not a dumb dude. So for him I thought that Luke was not a dumb dude until I saw him do this shit. Like I can't look past this. But at any rate, it's like everybody doesn't have a Luke Skywalker catalog that are getting money in every month from residuals or whatever, to be able to go out and provide their kids with curriculum the way that he was talking about. And so a lot of folks depend on traditional public schools, charter schools, private schools in order to enrich their kids. To Reef's point, absolutely more has to be done. And if this is the thing that galvanizes folks to put more emphasis into what needs to be taught to their kids outside of schools, then yeah, I'm all for it. But there's a really good chance that you got folks that are in Miami-Dade County that don't have resources, that don't have the time, that are working three jobs just to keep food on the table, that are not going to have access to that type of time in order to provide their kids with those kind of curricular ideas that he was talking about. So it's punch downsy.
I want to bring you in, Ish. And before we do, I'm going to do my normal Negro peeing routine here. I'm going to go Bayesian on y'all, full Bayesian. If you are in Miami-Dade right now, you can get a world-class education in the United States for free. First of all, y'all not working 3 jobs. Some of y'all say you are, some of y'all not. And 2, library cards are free. And 3, there's information. We are in an information age, and it's all around you. You got them phones. I just looked up the statistic yesterday on the access to information, even for the poor, is crazier than it's ever been. And I want to say, I'm not going to talk like we're not already doing what I'm saying. This isn't me talking down to my people. My people are actually already self-educating in the way that a lot of people self-medicate, right? This is why you have whole hotep streams on social media and whatnot, where people are exchanging whole ass kind of like, have you read the Trilateral Commission report, whatever? So I want to say this. I personally agree with you, Ray. There's going to be a portion of the population where Uncle Luke's advice is silly. Because at the end of the day, we're sending our kids to schools every day, and they're sitting in there for 6-7 hours. And we should still expect they're learning what they should be learning there, right? But I don't want to take away from our agency that we are already and kind of should be learning outside of these schools anyways. Ish, what do you think?
I mean, the first thing that came to mind is like in ancient Kemet and with Maya, 2 truths, even contradictory, can exist at the same time. So I think what he's saying is very true. Hopefully it does galvanize folks. But like what Sharif was saying, how many times do things like this happen, right? We just talking about a teacher in LA getting shot the other day or tased to death the other day, right? With cardiac arrest. It's like, how many times does this have to happen until folks realize that this society is just designed in this way to be anti-Black? Now, when we're talking about what Luke is talking about, yeah, I hope so. Folks is learning about the folks he named, but I would even question the folks that he named. Those folks aren't really the most, you know what I mean? Things I would point to myself when I say study Black history, right? He didn't mention John Henrik Clarke or Thurl Schomburg. Man, he didn't even mention Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history. So I even question what folks think to be the truth. And when I was a teacher, I always used to use this Talib Kweli quote, and it goes like this: if you travel down the river of tears in the boat of broken promises with heavy fog, it's hard to be clear exactly what your knowledge is, right? So even if you're a
bars,
damn.
Bars.
So somebody in Philly who understands bars? That's
listen, Philly protects hip hop. All right, Black thought all day. All right, don't forget Bahamadia. You know what I'm saying?
Bahamadia is my joint. I got her CD.
But I just need to really emphasize the fact that even if we're awash in information, if you don't know what you're looking for, if you never heard of Carter G. Woodson or been exposed to it, and the only thing you are exposed to are these kind of, what you said, like really simplistic, generalized notions of what Black is, right? Which is then through the perspective and lens of a white supremacist anti-Blackness, then what are you going to look for, right? You're going to run across a Martin Luther King site that talks about how Martin Luther King, cheated it on his wife, and then emphasize all that negative, right? It feeds into a loop. So in actuality, I think that even is the most insidious part about this, right? Because not only are you limiting people from even having access, but then the access that you are given is doubling down on the indoctrination that already has existed in this society about these mythologies of like American greatness and meritocracy and all this other ideas of fairness that really has never existed within this society. So like when we talk about the Civil Rights Act, when we talk about the Voting Rights Act, all them Jones is gutted. Them things lasted for a couple decades and then they got rid of it. As soon as Black people started to advance a little bit, they turned around and flipped around the story again and changed the rules. That is a consistent pattern, and we need to stop. And our ancestors, our elders knew this truth, and we forgot. And then we just find our situation here beholden to these people telling us what our history is. So that is true, but at the same time, we can also influence what is then being taught. And then the inability to do that, that is the problem.
So there's an elephant in the room, and I'm wondering if we're going to talk about it or we're going to just like not talk about it. And so
we already said you were a Republican.
El Michelle,
we
said made mention of it, right? And Chris, you made mention of it earlier. You, the New York Times. There was 3 particular units that were discrepant in terms of like the value of them. Right. And so are we going to talk about individually these 3 units and how folks in our community see them as problematic?
Well, talk about it. Go ahead.
So the one in particular is so our community, especially Black men, right, have this animus towards folks in who they love, right? And so our community has always been anti-LGBTQ.
That's not true. That's not true.
You said it's
I
not
reject
true?
that. I reject it.
When what?
I reject it. The black queer community has been as much of in every family, in every church, and in every place. They've been as much a part of the fabric of our community, of our literary scholars, of our letters, our art, our culture, our music, our everything, and our families and our churches.
Okay.
Name me a church. Name me a church that doesn't know who in their church might be wearing rainbow draws. Come on now,
Chris. In the early '89, in the early '80s, going into the '90s, those people couldn't even go to church. They weren't even accepted in.
They've always went to church, and they ran the choirs, and sometimes they were the deacons. But let me say this part, right? I'm not going to deny that we have homophobia in our community. What I'm not going to do is pretend that we have some specialized kind of homophobia in our community that whites or some others that doesn't just kind of match the bigotry. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to say the opposite. I'm going to say we actually have Black queer culture is as responsible for so much of Black culture as anything else, like overall, That's what I'm saying. I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm just speaking for me. But please, brother, don't me cut you off. Raise the point that you're raising. You are saying literally that you think that some Black people might be okay with DeSantis's thing because there are some units in here about Black queer theory.
Right. Like I feel like some people are extremely uncomfortable with their kids being taught the differences between people. Right. They feel like that's something that should happen if they're doing it, and not necessarily should happen in the confines of school, because you don't really know how people are teaching things or whatever. You don't really know. You don't have any control in terms of like what that message is. So, and I've talked to folks and that's how I don't feel that way. Like I feel like it's something that should be taught in schools. I feel like we should be able to teach the differences, etc. And then when your kid comes home, you then have a follow-up conversation or whatever if you need to rechannel any kind of messages that you felt like weren't the right message. But I feel like it would be we wouldn't be the 8 Black Hands if we didn't talk about the problematism that happens with those three particular units that they mentioned in the New York Times?
Can I just say something?
Jump in, brother.
I get concerned, right? Even right now, right? This is rooted in anti-blackness, right? And then Black folks are just very all-encompassing just by the nature, right? Just by being oppressed in this society from the very jump, by being the definition of what the bottom is within this society, right? And so we should always defend people's rights, regardless of, you know, the orientation and their race and everything. But then I sometimes think that we lose sight of the fact that this is rooted in anti-blackness. So they point that out, but they also point out Angela Davis. They also point out Robin Kelly. You know, our Black intellectual tradition has a long history of folks from various different orientations, right? Talking about Paul Robeson was a communist, right? So are we not going to talk about Paul Robeson being in front of the House Un-American Activities Commission? This is, I mean, like, this is ludicrous. And when we get caught up in the weeds like this, we are in the weeds while the other people are certainly clear about where they stand. So I need to just emphasize, I think the focus should be on Black liberation, and that anything else right now in this circumstance, we can't talk about freedom unless Black people are free. And that Black people have defined what freedom even means within this society, and other groups have benefited, and Black people have fought for other groups. So I think it's just very important that it's centered in the fact that Black people are left out of this conversation half the time and are talked about. And so when I know some of the folks that worked on this AP Africana Studies curriculum, I've heard the College Board folks say straight up, if any place rejects this AP stuff, that they're going to cut off the AP. So hopefully that is coming down the pipe. I've heard them say that in meetings in front of folks. And I think it just speaks to the fact that, you know, we have turned the corner a little bit in the sense of how many folks can look up this information and know and recognize the consistency. But at the same time, I think we're under an illusion to think that, you know, there aren't forces that want to muddle the conversation so we can talk about everything and everybody else, and then Black people are left holding the bag again. And that is a consistent pattern within this society. I don't mean to get all hype. I'm just saying, man.
No, get hype.
Get hype. Get hype.
Get hype. You know?
Yeah. Like, you know, divide and conquer and distractions are two of the, you know, the most deployed weapons, you know, out there. How do you distract? How do you divide and conquer? And between those two, you can get a pretty quick defeat of a people, you know? And so I think that's critical. I think the other thing, you know, is you just put up like a College Board, and it's, you know, back to the point earlier, like, you know, if they're silent, like I also, you know some of the folks who are, you know, were working on this, John, and I'm hoping that behind the scenes they are like, you know, finalizing whatever strategies they talked about doing, you know, because some of this was anticipated, right? And so like, okay, if you anticipated, what's the next move? And we'll see if they were actually playing chess or they were, you know, just talking a game. Because it's big money in a College Board too.
I mean, I do think that there's something to be said about the strategy. Years ago, the GOP and Republicans were on some different stuff. They were thinking that they had to be more broad-minded and appeal to more groups, or they were going to die out. So back then, they started creating outreach groups. Outreach to Latinos, outreach to African Americans. Even Trump said it this last time around, I'm going to expand the number of African Americans that vote for me, whatnot. And he put some money into it. And this is where you're getting all of this kind of, you know, this new Black media where people are starting to wear the MAGA hat and all that type of stuff. But they made a change to their thing when they started saying, no, what we really need to do is we just need to get the bigots out of each of those groups. We need to get the Latino people that hate the Blacks and are mad at the Blacks. We got to get the Blacks that are mad at the immigrants because the immigrants are taking their jobs. We got to get all of them that are against the gays, right? So their new strategy is not to diversify. Their strategy is to consolidate the bigots of every group. The Asians that are mad at the Blacks because they think they're not getting enough seats in the selective enrollment schools. The blacks that are mad at the Mexicans because they feel like the Mexicans are taking their jobs, they're coming over here or taking over their cities. The Latinos who don't like blacks because they're like, we got more than y'all got now. It's our turn. And y'all used to be the thing. Now we the thing. So really, it's a new strategy. It's not a diversity strategy. It's a bigot consolidation strategy. And we'll see how it holds up. We'll see if it works. I mean, because they are going to shave off 2 or 3% of everybody's special people. Every group has got these special friends, and the GOP is going to find every one of them and weaponize them against everybody. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but that does feel like what this is about when they start going after Black church folks in the hopes that they're going to talk bad about the queer committee, the Black queer, which you just said, Sharif, divide and conquer, right? If they could get us arguing with each other, we're going to end up being damn fools, because what we're going to do is say, we're going to get distracted with all of that and not remember the fact that they're trying to outlaw Black thought in Florida, right? Let's just keep it plain. The bottom line is we can fight, well, I don't like this part of it, or the Black feminist part. They're going to get the Black masculinists fighting the Black feminists, they say they don't need you and blah, 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 whatever. And we're going to get wrapped up in that. We're going to fall for the bait.
Every time,
right? We're going to jump up on Twitter, well, these Black women never stood by us anyways. And Black women will be like, well, y'all ain't never voted for the right person. We're just going to go back and forth. And meanwhile, they're going to erase us from the libraries.
So
what's
our plan? What's our call to action? Like, what should folks be thinking about? Because I think the silence that's coming from the College Board, that shit is really weighing on my conscience right now.
Well, I hope Ish is right. I hope what Ish just said is true, that they're going to come out and they're going to basically say you can't use our product then.
And they've already said that in a statement around censorship, right? They preempted this already. Now with this actually coming down as blatant, I am interested to see if they will stick to it, right? And this is very important. But I do need to emphasize, no other group in American society has fought for every other group in American society, right? So when we talk about the fight for affirmative action, all groups in this society who non-white benefited more, even arguably more than Black folks, from that fight. Right? When we talk about civil rights, when we talk about minority-owned businesses, when we, the list goes on, right? And this is the idea that at the very root, at the contradiction at the founding of this society, you have a counter narrative, you have a counter story, you have a different God, even though you might call them by the same name. So like when we talk about what is important and everything, yeah, the College Board has a responsibility, right? But then to even double, the veggie back off of Uncle Luke. That is true. Like, we have a responsibility to teach this in the home. We have this responsibility to rebuild communities that have been systematically targeted and destroyed by the powers that be. Want to make sure that the 1970s never happened again, right? Because that was the pinnacle of Black struggle. But if you heard the articulation of folks then and even today of Black folks who are really in the know about this history, it's always about the humanity. It's always about affirming what it means to be human. And then if we take that out and then we place this, that, and the other and all this, and all these other conversations are important, but at the same time, the very root of the issue has not been addressed, right? That's anti-Blackness, that's white supremacy, that is the extractive nature of this society. So again, I'll just double down and say, if you can't acknowledge or admit that Black people are never meant to be free in this society, I don't care what race you are, I don't care what ethnicity you call yourself, you have anti-Black beliefs. And that's just at the very root. And I would even go even harder and engage in some hyperbole. I would argue you can't be a good person in this society without knowing this history, without knowing these thoughts, without knowing about the counter narrative. And I ain't talking about the Black story that fits into the white story. I'm talking about the Black story that defines what humanity and fighting for rights is all about.
I disavow. Yo, go out here upset these good white people.
Not just the white people. Plenty of other folks were named just now.
This is true.
But it's everything you drop, man. I love it. But yo, you can't quote a Talib Kweli bar and then come back and then quote an Uncle Luke bar. It just doesn't make sense.
I mean, I feel like what he just said is so profound, though. I mean, it's true. One thing I was thinking as you were talking, Ish, though, is like, Ray just said, the elephant in the room. We do have a lot of other elephants that are behind this conversation. If we were to get, because you said hyperbole, let me jump into something that feels like hyperbole to others, but not to me. Anti-Blackness is universal. It's historic. It's intercontinental. So you just said all these groups that benefited from us. The Asians benefited from the Immigration Act that came out of the Civil Rights Act. We made it possible for them to come. And when they came, the majority of them came from places where the first in line were the majority educated. So you have cab drivers here now who are from Asian countries who are mad at the blacks for taking seats that they actually were doctors in their former country or educated in their former country. So of course their kids are doing better in some ways, but now they are ready to be anti-black so that they can get the next level of their whiteness, the next level of their probationary whiteness, right? You have people who've been here 2 days from Mexico and start hating blacks, start teaching their kids not to date or intermarry with the blacks. If we're going to talk about animals, or if we're going to talk about elephants in the room, we got to talk about the fact that skin whitening cream internationally is like one of the best selling products, right? So anti-blackness is not a domestic problem. Anti-blackness is a domestic weapon, but it's not a domestic problem. It's actually an intercontinental problem. So all these other groups that benefited from our massive effort to make America do right by itself in the civil rights movement, that's what we were. We're the consciousness of the United States. The United States was lying to the entire planet about pursuit of happiness and inalienable rights and everybody created equal. And there was this one group in the country who were like, yeah, but you never are going to be able to say that and have it be true unless you change the structure of your society the way that we need you to change it. Right?
Yeah.
So every other group white women benefited from that. All these other, new Americans, as we shall call them, who got here in one generation said, I never enslaved anybody. No, you didn't enslave anybody. But what you did was you came to a house that was like a casino and went to the front of the line. And the ground that you walked on that was paved, unlike the shithole country you came from, where you were having potato famines and all kinds of other shit going on. You came in and you didn't pay a price to buy into a house that had already been capitalized by the blood, sweat, and tears of Black people. But now everybody hates Black people. And this is what we got to think. This is the point we got to get to. I'm going to shut up about it. We are not a big percentage of the United States population.
13%.
And all the other parts of the population have a reason to have animus against us, one reason or another. So we do need a strategy.
Facts.
Where's our leverage? Where's our power? What's going to be our survivalist strategy?
Bro, it's got to be Black cultural capital. It also has to be how we spend our money, right? I feel like with the communities that you named, there's some touch points that are happening in those communities where money is touching at least, I don't know how many times it's touching, but it's touching more than in the Black community. We're not spending money in the Black community. Yo, first I want to shout out you and Reef, because y'all intentionally go out to these vendors and try to find Black owned vendors or whatever in order to do y'all stuff with y'all's company. And that's I think that's a first step. And I want to shout y'all out for doing that. But not everybody does that, bro.
Yeah, I feel like part of it is a capitalist strategy, jump in ish, and part of it's an educational strategy.
Yeah, and I would just say that all these are survival tactics. We're just talking about surviving, right? Mm-hmm. We're not going to buy our way into Black liberation. I mean, like, that is just proven throughout history. Even Black wealth has remained stagnant since Reconstruction. Another truth people seem to just forget, and that even the economic well-being overall of most Black people is lower now than it was when King got shot, right? And I think I said that last time. So we need to stop lying to ourselves and thinking that somehow we're going to buy our way out of freedom. Yes, it's a survival tactic. Teaching our children about these things are survival tactics, but we need to keep our eyes on the prize, and that's liberation, right? So liberation, yes, but we're not going to liberate ourselves within the system by being better than how the system. The idea to me is very counterproductive, right? Yes, do it. do that. And there's other things like Malcolm X said, by any means necessary, right? And there's different things we can do. But for me, at the end of the day, most of the time when I hear people talking about what the Black community should do, it sounds like you're just talking about survival tactics, something that will push down the fight.
What's a liberation tactic then? What are the liberation tactics at? Yeah, go ahead.
No, just like a drug addict, we just got to admit the issue. Yeah. Like, we're not going to move anywhere if we don't admit the issue. But there are so many mirages and camouflages in the way we think about this, the way it's presented to us, the way people orient themselves in this society, where they think that the number one goal is to live in a house, have a car, have as much wealth, right? And then this individualistic mentality feeds in to this system, and then it continues that cycle, right? And perpetuates the same ideology that created the initial idea that captured our folks to begin with. So like, when I'm talking about this, I'm not dismissing it. Like, I'm all for it, right? I reach out to Black vendors as much as possible and shop Black and go out my way. But at the same time, I recognize that's not going to lead to my liberation. I know that that's just another survival tactic that we need to start employing in order to maintain a certain balance, so we can educate our children, so we can create the conditions to lead towards liberation, right? But if that's not the goal, man, we're in that hamster wheel.
So I think I figured out the clicking. Let me say this: your mic, I think, is hitting on your beads there. So it's making, that's where the clicking sound was coming from. I was wondering where the clicking sound was coming from. I thought he was just talking so brilliant that it was going into that African language, that click language
Don't do that,
from
man.
Africa. I was like, this brother is so profound.
I disavow that.
Oh wow! Hey, but if you walk into the strips, right? And if you walk on the strips in Black communities, and then you look at the restaurants, you look at the businesses or whatever, that is not Black owned. There's a lot of that stuff that is not Black owned. It's people that just got here, that have only been here for like one generation, that own these stores, that are being able to get these businesses and stuff. And man, it troubles me because, you know, somebody pointed it out the other day. He's like, yo, I see this kind of restaurant, I see this kind of restaurant, but I don't see anything that's owned by Black folks. Why is that?
You could go to northern Minnesota, where damn near everybody is Scandinavian, and you don't see a person of color for many miles, and you will find a Chinese restaurant, right? You will find a Chinese restaurant all across this country. It's really funny. Like in places where there are very few Asian people, you also find Mexican restaurants. Like somebody who travels the country, you will find a Mexican restaurant everywhere. A good soul food restaurant, even in some Black-owned cities, sometimes can be a challenge to find one that is being ultimately supported, not just by Black people, but by everybody, like part of the general cuisine, right? In the South, there's lots of places that have really good soul food, but, you know, white people in the South are just built different. White people in the South can eat a good meal. They know they don't have the same problem people have across the country. I do want to say this. I think I might disagree with you a little bit, Ish, just to say this and to latch on to Ray's point, which is, I think building our own society, building a civil society, requires us to have schools and stores and bus companies and churches and community centers and just keep naming whatever it takes for there to be a civil society that we own and that we operate, right? Black banks, Black credit unions, Black schools, just keep naming them. I don't know why we can't have a Black credit union. Ray I can hear in my ear, Ray, you're about to say Greenwood, right? But it wasn't that long ago that I worked on a project.
Hold up his unopened envelope again.
He really was. I was about to, go back to, I worked on a project a few years ago about Black banks, and my part of it was just the research part of it. And it was amazing to me that how few we had nationally and even local ones, and how many of them were dying and going under, even the ones that we did have. And when you polled Black people, if the bank was more than 3 miles, I think, from their house, the number of them that will still participate in a Black bank dropped off by far. Even though everybody is doing virtual banking or whatnot, I do think there's something to be said for, we could be investing in ourselves more, into our civil system more, not as a way to try and buy liberation, but as a way to own the means of everything. The means of education, means of production, means of consumership, whatever.
That
Yeah,
won't
I mean,
end.
I think oh, go ahead.
No, my bad. I just want to say that won't end anti-blackness, but that was just all.
It won't end
Yeah.
anti-blackness, but
we'll be less dependent on.
I was about to say Chinatown doesn't end anti-Asian hate, but it does create a basis for which you can't just take them for granted.
Yeah, but right now in Philadelphia, they about to put a stadium on top of them, and they already cut through Chinatown in Philadelphia with a highway. So even that, they have no control, despite so-called owning some of the pieces that go there. Right? We're still at the whims. Greenwood was burnt down. Rosewood was burnt. You know, we can go down the list, and it goes back to the consistency. So move the bar, change the rules, and flip the situation around, and then blame us for not keeping up.
Okay, but then
domain show.
Well, no, we don't. This is the education show. I'd be bored as hell on that show.
The what show? What did he say?
He said eminent domain. He needed to do a show on eminent domain, some obscure policy of the government. And I'm the libertarian. I should love that show, but I would hate that show.
Are you still a libertarian?
Bruh, I'm a yes. I'm the.
Can you just do some anti-black shit too?
Bruh, we should do that show. That's the show we should do. Everybody show up and bring your ism. You're a communist, you're a Marxist, you're a libertarian, you're a Republican, you're this. Everybody bring your thing and let's battle it out. Let's see which one.
Let's see which one is most
let's see
which one is free of anti-blackness.
Which one will save you from the war on drugs? Which one will save you from police abuse? Which one will save you from unreasonable search and seizures? I bet you I'm gonna win that one. I bet y'all win all those. Because all y'all other parties are participating.
Regardless of man, a lot of those guys. I think I saw some libertarians on January 6th up in that joint. So I don't know how long they.
No, you didn't see no real libertarians in there.
I don't know.
Regardless of
I disavow, and I keep going back to my thing. Everybody got these special people. Everybody got they people touched by God.
Disavow.
Yeah, I disavow some of them. I'm a small L libertarian, not a big L libertarian. All right, well, listen, we're coming towards the end of the show, but I think we hit a part that was profound that I'm going to feel like later we didn't really touch on enough, which is this part that Ish is raising. All of that we talked about won't save us. And if we were talking about we get outraged. We see these things come up, academic whitewashing, state laws being passed, not just in Florida. Come on, Oklahoma is passing laws, Texas is passing laws. Lots of people are passing laws that should alarm us to death or whatnot. But the alarm part is just like the first part.
And it ain't just down south, right? Indiana tried to, but
I still consider them down south.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. As a northerner, I'm still going to.
PA is up south. Indiana's up south. That's all. They
upper,
up south.
North and south. Yeah.
Exactly.
Just like I'm in southern Canada where I live. So to refine more quickly, rapid prototype. What are things that get beyond the alarm and get to this is what we should do? What's the libertarian tactics here in the way that we fight?
Yeah, I mean, I still go back to the education piece. I think that piece is, if that's not front and center with every single thing that we do, and not just for our kids and our students, but our students' grandkids. Like that's the vision that we should be. That's the way we should be teaching, as if the student in front of us is going to positively impact their grandkids based off of their educational attainment, their social political awareness, their ability to connect the dots, understand history, current context, and what the future could bring if we make the right moves. And for me, the other piece that you all were speaking about, I think the applying Nguza Saba in different ways. You were talking about cooperative economics, right? And even the word Ujamaa, I think it means like community or something like that, right? Like it means community, but it also is talking about in the Nguza Saba context of like this cooperative economics. Like how do we still use our finances, and how do we band them together to bring out political power? Because at the end of the day, is how do you amass power in all the different ways to do it? You can do that by controlling your children's education, and other people aren't. It's not so easy to brainwash them. You can do it by controlling your dollars, and that where people aren't liberating them from your pocket, and we're spending it outside. Like it's all, my mother used to say, it's almost like it's a fire in your pocket. You just got to get rid of it as soon as possible, every single chance you get. And so like how we do that it's about attaining power, inch by inch, block by block, school by school. And for me, those are the ways where it's protecting ourselves, it's surviving. But right now, what did Fuller used to tell us about one person that was like, hey, you know what, we're not going to get out of this, so I'm just going to like extend the battle lines. I'm going to just extend the work to do it. Like, and I think part of that is attaining the power, and at the bottom line, the resources and the educational attainment, like those two things, if we can't like purify that, and so to speak, I ain't got no answers for you.
And Dr. Fuller, the quote I think that he got from John Hope Franklin was that, I think that's where it came from, was that people who were enslaved decided at some point there was no chance of escape and there was no chance of winning. So the only chance they had was to extend the lines of hope through another generation.
An organization, right? Hope and organization, or just.
Well, I mean, yeah, like the hope to keep fighting, to keep working, to keep meeting in secret, to keep conspiring, but with the reality that you're probably not going to win.
Yeah, I mean, if you were living here in the late 1700s, like looking forward, what do you see? If it was the late 1600s, what do you see? 1700, what do you see? Beginning of 1800, what do you see? It's like hard to even imagine something, right? Like, and this is why we talk about Harriet Tubman a lot, but I think that the part that I think is so important was Harriet Tubman's father. Harriet Tubman's father, I think he was so critically important to Harriet Tubman. We know Harriet Tubman, but we don't know the man who white folks was like, yo, this man never lies, and he's the trusted Negro, and we could trust him because he's the so good darky. And what was he doing? He was training a rebel.
Survive from this darky talk.
Like, that's what he was doing. He was training the rebel, and he took all the other hits. And imagine like taking that, and the white folks like, yo, you're the good one, you're the trust. So much so, and he didn't lie. He actually was careful not to lie, so he could maintain that reputation, because his real work was raising this rebel. Right. And so much so, one of the times when she came back to the plantation, he blindfolded himself so that when they asked him, and they knew she was here because she left with people. When she came, she left with people, which meant money walked out the door. And they were going to come to him and ask, did you see her? And because he was blindfolded, when she talked to him, he's like, no, I never laid eyes on her. Right. But that kind of how many people could withstand when people are like, oh yeah, well, you this, you that, and you that. Meanwhile, he's raising who he's raising. Same thing with Dr. King. We talk about Dr. King's father. His mother was a trained teacher. She was an educator, but she had to stop teaching, right? Because she got married. Back then, oh, you're married, you can't teach anymore. So you basically fired because you got married. And who we always talk about, the mom is the first teacher. Who was teaching him about some of the politics and policies and all the things? And when you hear him talk about his mother and describe his mother, you understand like, this is what she was doing. She was raising a rebel. And so you wear that problem child hat. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be raising rebels in whatever ways that we can. That's what we should be doing. That would extend my line of hope for me.
Well, two things. One, in a system of oppression, a problem child is an example of a healthy person, because it is your job to be a problem for the system when the system is this jacked up. The second thing is everything you just said is outlawed by Governor DeSantis. So just so you know, everything you just said honestly could get you fired as a teacher.
Yo, be outlaws, yo. Be an outlaw.
Be an outlaw. Be an outlaw. So, Ish, we're going to come to you. This is a final thought. We're going to wrap on these liberatory tactics. Like, how do we get beyond the alarm of these things and actually start doing something that liberates us?
Well, I just want to veggie back off of what Sharif was just saying. Education, man. Like, if you look at the trajectory of even the civil rights activists, there's a long intellectual tradition that they were brought up to, right? Satima Clark was an educator that was cultivating leaders, right? Right under their nose. The great book Dr. Jarvis Gibbons wrote, Fugitive Pedagogy, tells this story that regardless of what was going on, regardless of what folks were allowed to talk about or teach, they taught anyway. and they carried on the tradition. And then 20 years later, guess what? You have a bunch of active students ready to change the system. And they did, right? But the thing is, we can't allow ourselves to do what happened afterwards and then think, oh, well, we reached the promised land now. Now we just have to get everybody together and then start blaming each other about what the circumstances are, right? Which unfortunately is the reality that we're facing today. And our children, don't get it twisted, y'all. Our heroes are dead and our children are lost for the most part. And that is a reflection of the way this society wants it to be. So I think that education, there's a long story, intellectual tradition of folks fighting back. And we have things to point to, examples, folks that we can look up to, stories that we can connect ideas to, and really have our children internalize this to be the rebels, to be the ulcer in the belly of the beast that, quite frankly, Black folks have always been in this society. And if we just sugarcoat that, if we generalize it, if we try to whitewash it and leave it out the books, we're already doing a disservice, because there is nothing that our children can point to as an example. And the only examples that they know of is either in a negative light, like I'm going to get shot, or in a light that, oh, well, I don't want to, just fit into this. I just want to get money and get paid, right? And again, this is what we're seeing today, man. And education is the only way I see right now to dig ourselves out of the hole, because we're not starting at zero, y'all. We're starting at negative 700,065 at this point, and it's worse now than it was in 68.
Wow. We starting at negative 1619. All right. Raymond.
This dude is so petty.
Raymond.
So I listen. So I think with us, it starts with the schools, just like everybody has said. You guys know that I'm a Plessyist. I believe that if we had the same, if everything was equal, then we would be in a lot better position than we are given the circumstances post Brown. I like the idea of these school choice vouchers, and I see how some folks from some subgroups are using these to catapult themselves into getting the schools that they want. I think that it's time for us as Black people to now use that same avenue to get the schools that we want. I would love to see all Black schools that could teach the same topics that Uncle Luke was talking about. Could have freedom schools like Reefs during the summer and have that extended learning piece, and that could just be culturally affirming. I would love that. And so if there's anybody that wants to jump on board with that in terms of writing curriculum, in terms of finding space in order to do that, I'm with it. Y'all know we here every Sunday. Hit us up. We'll come up with a plan of action and we'll get it done.
Well, I appreciate that, because we will be with it. We will get it done. Get in contact with us. Let's start the revolution. Let's do what we can do. I agree with what Dr. Fuller had taught us when we met. And he said that to us, that there was a point in which that our people, our ancestors, figured out that there was no easy victory, that it did feel like a no-win situation. When I think about the size of what we are in terms of our percentage of the United States population, I think it's so small that we would need a really grand strategy to win. And Black nationalism for a long time was the hope, the extending lines of hope. We can feed ourselves breakfast. We can get our own kids their libraries and get their education, their curriculum. And maybe today we don't win, but in the future we win by doing what you all just said, which was, we don't talk about the father who was behind Harriet Tubman. We don't talk about the others, but maybe they made a commitment at some point. I'm not going to win within my lifetime. I've already seen how big this thing is. But if I can teach my kids to infiltrate and double cross, if I can prepare them with the World Fund of information that helps them understand a game that's going to change 2 times above my understanding is old people got to stop feeling like we are wise in some ways. We are not built for the future. The young people are built for the future. So our collaboration that we have with young people, with younger people, is our ability to instill wisdom that prepares them to play a game that we're never going to play, right? We're not going to be around for the game that they have to play. If you are looking at a kid right now who is 10 years old and you are my age, you are going to be dead before the game that they're going to play when they're 30 or 40 or 50 years old. You're not going to understand the game that they're going to be playing, right? But you can be prophetic. You can instill in them through education and through the means of education things that help prepare them for that fight. And that's what I think we should be doing. I agree with Ish. I don't think we can win just by opening banks and opening up a capital, fund that kind of creates it. I don't think reparations would do it 100%. I don't think any of that stuff would hurt. I don't think any of that's going to hurt, though. Just black bookstores, black coffee shops, black banks, whatever. I don't think any of that's going to hurt. But I think black schools is the most subversive thing we can do to win. We need to get off a ratchet Twitter, and we need to get out of these like corporate hip hop gossip circles and start focusing on a very quiet way of preparing our children to infiltrate and double cross. We're going to do that through schools and education. So,
Ish, can you give me some of those beads? Can you give them the reef? I'm gonna see reef soon. So
I see what I can do, brother.
Don't do it. He will desecrate them.
Yeah,
don't
if
ever
he
give
wear
those
them,
to
he'll
anybody.
get kicked out of his party, bro.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Trust.
That's right.
Yo,
That's
what
right.
Ish, you put it. You raised a good point that this boy in KKK. We're talking about like up south, Philadelphia Union League that has a history of racism, banning people, black folks from even being in there, and then when they were in there, they had to be in servitude to to others in there. They're actually recognizing and giving an award to Ron pretty soon. So he'll be in Philadelphia to receive an award. Yeah.
For
yeah.
what? An award for what?
For banning the Black AP course,
Wait,
other
back
things.
up. Who's giving him this award?
The union. What is it? It's the Union Hall. Union League.
Union League, yes. In Philadelphia, this Tuesday coming up. So there's people in the Union League pushing back, but they're going ahead with it and giving this man an award.
And they postponed it. And this is what they do. It was supposed to be held before. People made some noise. Then they postponed it. And then they snuck it in on another calendar date, right? This is what they do. They're like, all right, well, it's too much noise right now. Wait till they're distracted with something else, like football, maybe. I don't know, maybe a football game. And then we're gonna bring him back up here and give him this award that they believe he deserves. Right. And this is up south. This is Philadelphia, but this is America.
Well, cool. I mean, listen, when people show you who they are, what's the quote?
Believe them the first time.
And what people do when they do things like this, it shows their values. And it's good to know who's who, right? And this is what I've had to say, and Ray knows this because Ray and I are more in this side of the world. When it comes to education policy and advocacy, we have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. And we have had friends in the school choice movement for years and years and years who are now loving and riding this Youngkin DeSantis wave of anti-Blackness. And what they are doing is they are damaging their own policies. Yeah. They are damaging their policies with everybody else because they've buckled down on a white-only strategy, which leaves everybody else open for grabs. So I've said it on the show before, I've joined the everybody else movement, right? And your school choice folks, these are some people that are going to give them awards. Right? Give them accolades. Oh my God, you did vouchers. You did some of that anti-Black stuff, but oh my God, let's give you an award.
That's secondary. That's not
secondary. That's no big deal. Because the Black people in that movement, they're not going to say anything. The Byron Donaldsons of the world and the Tim Scotts of the world and the Candace Owens of the world and the Herschel Walkers of the world, they're not going to say nothing. We do anything we want to Black people and they won't say anything. We'll keep trying that as a strategy, school choice, folks. This has been another episode of the 8 Black Hands. It's been episode 195. I feel like we got a little violent on this one this time around. And I was particularly kind of animated about some things because I am alarmed about our topic that we had tonight. I think when you start erasing the books, you start burning the books, you start pulling things out of the library. When you start calling our scholars people who are producing things that have no educational value, I feel like it's a war. I feel like we are in an intellectual war, and there are powers and principalities that are weighing down on us while we are sitting up here wondering what's the last thing Megan Thee Stallion did this week, not paying attention to. I'm completely off the prize that people are trying to set us into an era of post-Reconstruction again. They're trying to do, history will repeat itself until you learn the lesson. Until you learn the lesson, God will keep giving you that lesson over and over and over again. And the lesson that we are learning right now is that when you go to sleep, it was said tonight on this show, when you go to sleep about the most important things to your human rights, to your existence in this country as a citizen, don't be afraid. I mean, don't be surprised when you wake up, like Rip Van Winkle, you wake up and you've lost everything.
Stay woke, bro.
Stay woke.
Stay woke.
I said it last week on this particular show, I think too. Dr. King's last sermon was about staying awake. It was called Remaining Awake during the
Great Revolution. Yeah.
Right? Go back and read it, people. Thank you. We'll see you again next week.
Shout out to Erica Huggins. Her birthday was early this month, but we celebrated her yesterday. And just appreciate her, the love and leadership that she pours into our people, into humanity. Erica Huggins, Mama Erica Huggins, my bad. We love you. Thank you for all that you do. Can't wait to see you.
Shout out, people. This is what we do. We appreciate all you friends and family and listeners who have watched this. Please share the show with your other friends and family. Make sure that more people find out about the 8 Black Hands. These Sunday night shows, they take a little bit of work for us, but it's not the real work. We need a revolution. We need a network of people sharing everything together, the work of this. So you're part of our family. Let's do it together. We'll see you next week on another episode of the 8 Black